So, the new Wicked film is coming out and I am destined to be disappointed because I am not directing it and I am not in control. And what is great about books, because my big love is the book, the adult non-musical book that the musical is based on, although of course I also love the musical. The wonderful thing about books is that you can just direct everything. You can choose the costumes, the set, the way everybody's faces look, the way people say things. And I hear that's just not the case when somebody you've never met with lots of money is directing a version of something you love that you have no say over. So I want to talk a little bit today about the differences between the book, should you not want to or not have time to read it before you see the film, and the stage show, and what potentially I think was tragically lost in the adaptation from book to stage, and what I think we could claw back for this film duo, because it's a duo, right? And it says on the internet that the first part that we're going to see in November is 2 hours and 41 minutes. Now the whole stage show, it's in its entirety, is 2 hours 45. So that leaves some wiggle room, no? Some room for some extra content. Some tying up of some loose ends, please, sir. Now, I was drawn to Wicked as a book after the musical, in my defence, like in my early 20s, because I'd read a lot of fantasy before, and this was the only fantasy that I'd read so far at that stage that wasn't focused on fetishising war, didn't overly sexualise or decentre women, and was arguably like the antithesis to the girl boss narrative. It just contained women simply being women. I will warn you, for those of you who want to try the book, that if Wicked the stage play was a Disney film, then the book by Gregory Maguire would be its darker, more twisted, ancient fairy tale equivalent with all of the trigger warnings attached. It's my favourite fucked up fairy tale and I'll defend it to the end. Now, what we lose in the early life of Elphaba, I can live with. We lose one of the best characters in the book, Turtle Heart, who ends up actually being in a throuple with both of her parents. He is like the most wonderful man and also potentially the father of Nessa Rose, Elphaba's sister. We also lose the nanny. I fucking love the nanny. She's like if Miriam Margolyes was in a fantasy novel looking after children who constantly bit her whilst being into like crystals and tarot. Like I love her. But the one thing I would point out about the beginning of the book, which I think is kind of understandable but also like really like a gaping hole in the narrative of Wicked, is that, spoilers for something that's been out for like 30 years, in the book Wicked it is canon that it turns out the Wizard of Oz is the father of Elphaba, the Wicked Witch of the West, and in the stage show it's depicted as like a saucy little romance they had on the side, but in the book it's a rape. It's just fully a rape. But moving on to what I think the film will most likely cover most and spend the most time in, which is Elphaba and Glinda's time at uni. First, the character of Fiero. He is not a bad boy. Oh no, he is a prince, but he's a very well-behaved, very lovely, racialized man. I think it's hinted that he's black. He has tribal tattoos all over him of blue diamonds, which like go the whole way down his face and then down his chest. And crucially, he's married. He is a teenager, but he is also married. An unconsummated marriage it is, but he is. Crucially, Glinda doesn't fancy him at uni. Even more crucially, neither does Elphaba. Famously, there was, like, for those of you not within the Broadway Wicked stan scene, I'll fill you in. Essentially, there's a really famous actress that they really wanted to be in the stage show of Wicked, and they thought that was what was going to help them get it off the ground. And so because they wanted to involve her as Glinda, they inflated the role of Glinda in the musical to make it more of like an equal parts about Glinda as it is about Elphaba. Wicked, the life and times of the Wicked Witch of the West, is, surprise it or not, just about Elphaba. Glinda's in it, but she is not fighting Elphaba for a man. Well, I think that I would say there's definitely a queer reading to be had between Elphaba and Glinda that don't worry, fanfic has already got a hold of. Oh, the depths you could delve to. Relatively within their like quite pure friendship group at university, which includes Nessa Rose in an active way, and also some like other boys including Bark, they're all kind of like, they all just love each other. Like there's no big romance. The only thing that happens, and I will say this as well, vindicating Bark, who in the musical is kind of depicted as a bit of a loser, a bit of a person who just has a crush on Glinda, in the book, he gets a snog from Glinda. Glinda's kind of into it too. I'm just saying, justice for Bock. Poor Bock. But not only is Fiero not like a pompous white man who like strides around like hips first, hitting on women, he's also incredibly nice to Elphaba. He'd never say the phrase in the musical, maybe the driver saw green and thought it meant go. Like, no, he would never. And they never even fancy each other at uni. Like, it wasn't really the point of Elphaba's uni experience that she was pining after a man, or that her best friend had fallen in love with a man and she didn't know what to do. Now, I think we come to what I think is the most crucial difference between the books and the films, and what makes me love the book more, is that I can't emphasize this enough. Elphaba is not gifted. She doesn't even study sorcery. In the musical, like, that's the hook for the whole show, is that she's got this rare gift, the kind of Matilda effect, and she's like the chosen one. But instead, in the book, the things that sets her trajectory off, like her whole life, is that she feels a sense of strong justice against how animals in this world are being treated, because in this world, like, animals are professors and they're like fully members of society and they're being persecuted by the government essentially, and she feels bad about it, and she starts helping Dr. Dillamond, who is a professor goat who is trying to research and prove that there is no material difference between animals and humans. She like helps him in his research that he then gets assassinated for by the government because it's so controversial, and she tries to carry on his research. So really her power, and the only thing she's really interested in at uni, is research and like being the person who cares, not that she has any kind of innate talent herself. Also crucially, she does not want to see the wizard, as depicted in The Wizard and I. And the feeling's mutual. The wizard doesn't want to see her either. It's a spontaneous trip where she begs to go and see the wizard, not that he summons her out of this feeling of this like fatherly curiosity, or that a prodigy has arisen at Shiz and he must meet her. She goes to the wizard with Glinda to beg for mercy for the animals. Like, that is literally, it's a political meeting that is literally about that. It's not about her talents. She's not starstruck by him. She's not excited about it. She just simply wants him to stop being a dick. And he says no. And just like the musical, she flees. Quits university, doesn't come with Glinda, sends her in the carriage home alone, and becomes a political fugitive. Actually, I lied. The actual most crucial thing I think in this whole like comparison is that Elphaba doesn't want to not be green. One of the reasons in the film that she wants to see, in the stage show, she wants to see the wizard is because she wants to ask him to de-greenify her and how much easier her life would be. Definitely not in the book. And like, that's sad. That's the modification that makes me the saddest, that Elphaba went from somebody who doesn't care about her skin colour and largely like glosses over it when other people try to make a big deal out of it, to somebody who secretly really wants to change that about herself. I might be moving into like film 2 territory, but I also just want to say that we never get the for good moment, the kind of reconciliation moment between Glinda and Elphaba, where they kind of basically sing being like, I know that we're on different paths in life and we have different political opinions, but I really hope that your life goes okay and that you're safe, which is really nice. Love that. Not what happens in the book. What happens in the book is that Glinda goes on with her life, really upsets Elphaba the 2 times that she crosses her again, marries a baron, doesn't marry Fiero, doesn't even really look twice at him, and essentially goes on to work for the equivalent of Trump. And it made me think like differently about that this week, where I see a lot of like posts online about people being like, can't we cross the divide? Can't we all be friends? Like, it's just politics. I like having friends with people with opposite opinions to me, and like there is a certain extent to which of course I agree and defend that, and I've talked a lot about that on the channel, but there's also a degree to which I think it's oversimplifying things a little, and it's kind of chilling to have that in the musical when it's just like, don't worry, it's fine that you're working for a fascist and actively helping my downfall and like potentially involved in the assassination of my lover. What, you know, let bygones be bygones. We had some good times at uni. Hey! Like, what? If there is a female friendship at the heart of the Book of Wicked, I'm not saying that the friendship between Glinda and Elphaba isn't tender and interesting and well thought out, but it's just such a small part of the book. If there is a tender, transformative female connection in the book, it would probably be between Elphaba and Fiero's widow. because Fiero gets assassinated basically because he's connected to Elphaba. It's like a political assassination. And Elphaba, spoilers for the book, although I've literally given you about 10 spoilers at this point, and I don't think it spoils it enough. Wicked isn't a book that I think you can spoil, because I don't really think it's about the twists and turns, and it's about how it unfolds and how it's told. But essentially, at the end, you know, a good chunk of the end of the book is Elphaba spent living with Sarima, Fiero's widow, and like trying to make it up to her, like trying to get her to forgive her for like falling in love with her husband. And it's like really sad and tragic. On the plus side, I still think that the movie is about a girl who becomes a woman because she realises that she's against fascism, even though nobody else around her is. And one of the messages I take from the book is what happens when you try and fight against something evil and none of your friends join in and none of your friends stick by you. The reality of joining the resistance alone, and spoiler alert, the results aren't triumphant, not on a personal level at least. And that's what's so moving and tragic about the book. Like, this is truly a tragedy in its most like Shakespearean sense. And that's why I love it, because part of my like reading personality is that I'm a grumpy little tragic person. Like, my other favourite books are The Virgin Suicides and Geek Love and, you know, kind of sick, twisted books like that. So it makes sense, I guess. But I just wanted to have a little rant in the forest, because we all know that's my forte. And I hope if you're getting excited about the release of Wicked, that only spurs you on to potentially read the book as well, because I really think it brings a new dimension to understanding and enjoying the musical, and it's never stopped my enjoyment of the musical, it's only magnified it. Join me on Instagram if you would like to compare notes on how you're dressing a little bit Ozcore, a little bit like you're from the Emerald City for the next few weeks, probably, because I'll be sharing loads of outfits over there. And we can't forget, unfortunately, that I have a book coming out and I have to plug it. And I want to plug it. I'm trying to be proud of myself and like back myself. It's called Half-Ass Human. If you pre-order it, it makes all the difference than like buying it after it's out. There are links below to where you can buy it anywhere in the world, and I've just finished recording the audiobook, so if you like the sound of my voice, you can have more of it on call. Now I'm off to watch that sunset that's happening at 3:04 in the afternoon. Good. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and thanks to the Gumption Club for making this possible. Frog Snog out.